What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at SoundHound AI stock, ticker symbol SOUN, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Wednesday, April 10th. Okay, guys, SoundHound stock today down 15 cents a share. That's minus 3% on the dot. Essentially flat here after hours. SoundHound here today is today's wildcard stock. Guys, be sure to vote for tomorrow's wildcard stock in the comment sections across the entirety of the Roensch Capital Charts channel. Every day I'll tally them up, and the next day I will cover whichever ticker got the most votes. Now let's take a look at this name here and pull out every single little thing that the market gave us, and let's do so in 10 minutes or less. Ready? Let's start with the volume profile analysis here on the 5-minute chart. Listen, by the way, guys, the wildcard stock gets uploaded every single day at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, so if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Helps out tremendously. Now let's take a look at this. The moves that I'm primarily interested in to kind of check under the hood and see, okay, is there additional bias that we can pull out that either matches the price action or goes directly against the price action? Those are things we need to pay attention to, because if all we're looking at is the price action, we're missing everything behind the scenes. Everything that we can peel back the layers of the onion and see, we're just ignoring. So that is the first move there, that pop and drop that we saw. I also want to take a look at this kind of move into the intraday lows. Okay, right there, if we can get that circled. And that's it here today on SoundHound. So let's pull this up. Contextual open, fade. That's very normal. Listen, we saw quite a few consecutive red bars with this one high volume red bar. I'm not going to label bearish bias on that. The reason why, the high volume bar, if you look here, let's delete that so we can get a better view, has a long wick, a long tail. That tells me that this was likely, in big part, a battle bar. A lot of buying and selling going on, butting heads, kind of arguing, right? Fighting for that move. That pumps up the volume. Okay, it was not necessarily a one-sided candle. We have that big bottoming tail, which tells us that the buyers kind of picked it up off the floor and contributed to that higher volume. And by the way, one out-of-context candle like this, there's too much of a risk of randomness. Okay, there's too much of a risk of that fooled by randomness kind of thing. I like to see consecutive out-of-context bars. We saw consecutive bars, but they were well within context. Okay, here, we got a little bit of a pop in volume. You know, 2 bars. It's not 3, it's not 4, it's not 5 consecutive high-volume bars. But I'll go ahead and assign a small amount of bearish bias there, because as soon as the stock turned around and started to bounce, volume tanked off back to what was contextual for that time of day. So this is clearly a small amount of bearish bias, but it's just 2 out of context candles, so we have to take that with a grain of salt. Let's move on now and take a look at the 30-minute chart for the self-fulfilling prophecy psychological levels that myself, whole bunch of traders, therefore you guys, I think, should be paying close attention to here tomorrow. You'll notice that this is a very simple chart. All I'm interested in here is what helps us figure out the psychology. So I have the 50 period and the 200 period on a heavily watched 30-minute chart. And you can see here, guys, that SoundHound is struggling. We gave up that 50 period, okay, back on the 5th. And we've been bouncing off of that thing ever since. Okay, this is a descending level of resistance, psychological, right? Bulls, this is going to need to change. Okay, we need to reclaim that 50 period. It has now pushed us below $5 a share. I want to see a reclaim of that 50 period as soon as possible to break this descending level of what's being seen currently as resistance. Break it on high volume, retest on low volume, and boom, bounce on high volume to rip that 50 period into a flattened out position, if not, curling back a little bit upside. Once that occurs, it can help us push up through 5 and kind of use that area as a trampoline to move up toward that 200 period moving average. Whereas bears, you guys just want to see this continue. A descending 50 period, any test, rejecting down. All right, the 4-hour chart. Let's take a look here. Guys, this crossover here, this is oftentimes seen or thought of as a death cross, the 50 period crossing over the 200. I'm not a fan. It's overhyped to me. It's a silly way to look at things. It means essentially nothing other than the psychology that it introduces. But bulls, just understand that we're currently straddling around 550 with those 2 moving averages here on the 4-hour. And ideally, a reclaim of those as soon as possible. Both of them would be the best case scenario, but understand that $5 is kind of in the way. That's the immediate concern, and we're talking 13 to 16% moves to reclaim both of those. So I'm keeping an eye on the 4-hour if it comes more into play, but until then, guys, the daily chart is massively in play right now. Couple of things going on here. We're currently testing the 50-day moving average. Listen, bulls, we need to see a bounce away from that 50-day like now, because the bear's goal here was not only to crack 5 to the downside, but also get below the 50-day with the 50-day ascending, meeting around 5, beefing up that $5 area as a resistance level. That's what the bears want to see, which means bulls, we need to fight that off. We need to flip that into the bulls' favor, which means reclaiming the 50 and reclaiming 5, getting the 50 to continue up above 5 with the stock above it, help beef up that $5 level, but not as a resistance. Do so with that acting as a support. Okay, listen, tomorrow's the battle of the 50-day. It's the battle of $5 a share. Someone's going to come out on top, and it's crunch time. It's time to go on this name, like now. Okay, this thing's going to pick a direction, and likely is going to take some psychological momentum with it until it can reverse. So, like, listen, guys, seriously, tomorrow, the next couple of days here on SoundHound, this is a really big deal. This is probably the most crucial time we've seen on this stock since, really since it came into play, at least, on the backside of this move. Now, implied volatility on this name, if we pull this up here, it is falling. Again, the lower that goes, the more favorable conditions become for new options buyers to come in and purchase contracts. All right. If we take a look at the expected move, the next expiration we have here is April 12th. That's Friday at the close. By Friday's close, the expected move is plus or minus 40 cents per share. There's no earnings or anything between now and then. So if we divide that by 3 trading days, we get plus or minus about 13 cents per share expected move by tomorrow's close. But I like to add 50% to that to make up for the fact that the first number assumes a green streak or a red streak into the end of the week. So if you add about 50%, that's a plus or minus 20%. Sorry, plus or minus, that'd be crazy. Plus or minus a 20 cent per share expected volatility. Understanding the expected volatility is huge if you want to be a profitable options trader. The analysis and all that, we do all that for directional purposes. Okay? The expected move is the volatility part of that equation, that if that's missing, the chances of becoming a profitable options trader just went out the window. We have to understand the expected volatility. What does the market expect? Because volatility can crush you even if you're correct directionally. And it can also benefit you greatly if you're on the right side of both. Now, one more thing we can do to pull out directional bias out of SoundHound here today. We're squeezing this thing dry, getting everything we can. Look at this, a ridiculous bias. Volume is low, very low. Take this with a grain of salt. 27,500 total contracts traded here today, 21,400 calls, and 6,100 puts. A heavy call side bias. Volume is low, take it with a grain of salt, but quite the call side bias on the overall call put ratio. The short-term speculators, guys, that 0 to 20 delta range, nearly 5,000 calls, 1,263 puts. Heavy call side bias in the short-term speculation category as well. Those short-term bets being placed, the far out of the money aggressive bets. Again, volume's extremely low. Take it with a grain of salt. One buyer can throw these numbers off. But that's what the traders are telling us here today. Listen, guys, if you get value out of these videos, please leave a like on the way out. Be sure to comment down below your vote for tomorrow's wildcard stock. It could be anything. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.